If you look at how stablecoins are named, you will see that they tend towards the concept of reliability, right? Stable coin. The reliability of the coins basically comes from two things. Does the asset exist? Which is what proof of reserve solves, right? Proof of reserves proves to you on an ongoing near real-time basis that the asset that you're supposed to have as a result of holding the on-chain token is actually in existence in the off-chain real world. That makes it kind of a critical component of these stablecoin systems. And the second key thing is that, the asset itself is doing well. The asset itself in the off-chain world has not become somehow devalued or made less valuable relative to what the on-chain token thinks it's worth or shows that it's worth. There's other forms of proof of, like proof of composition, proof of solvency, proof of liabilities, that solve the second problem. So proof of reserves is really just the beginning of making stable coins reliable and making real-world assets reliable. It fundamentally proves that the asset that you are representing on chain as a token actually exists. There's a lot of other proof of things, proof of composition, proof of liability, proof of solvency, various proof of methods that show you not only that the asset is there, but that the asset is in a certain form, it's in a certain state. What we're really trying to do with proof of reserves here in DC is make sure that all of the assets, whether they're stable coins or tokenized funds or various other real-world assets, prove that they actually exist in relation to the token that represents them on chain. Ideally, so much so that you wouldn't actually be able to even generate an additional token without the off-chain reserves. And then you have other proof ofs, like proof of composition, proof of solvency, proof of liability, that prove to you whether the state of the asset is changing. The proof of bill that we're working on with a number of other legislators and their staff and other groups here in DC is really focused on proving that the real-world assets that are backing a coin, whether it's a stable coin, whether it's a tokenized fund, whatever the coin is about, that those assets actually exist. And that proof about them existing doesn't happen on an annual audit basis, doesn't happen on a monthly report basis in the form of a PDF that, is very unclear, and it's not very clear how anything was verified. But it happens on a second-by-second basis, so it happens in near real time. And beyond happening in near real time, you can drill down into the details of the underlying asset. So you wouldn't just know that it's treasuries. You would know that it's treasuries. You would know that it's 2-year or 5-year or 10-year treasuries. You would know the yield on the treasury tranches. You might even know the custodian with which those treasuries are held. And this would be something like proof of composition, right? So you would have proof of reserves, proof of composition, proof of liabilities, proof of solvency. All of these different pieces of proof are providing critical insight into what's going on in the real world relative to what you have on chain. And we want to make this connection between what's going on in the real world and what's going on chain as tight as possible. The way that we do this is by creating a unified golden record, which means that the token that represents the stablecoin or the tokenized fund or the real world asset isn't just about moving ownership anymore. It's not just about, I'm going to send my token to you and you're going to send a token to me and we exchanged ownership. The token as a unified golden record now becomes a data container for this critical information about the status of the asset. If it's a stable coin, it's, what is the status of the account where the fiat is held? If it's a tokenized fund, what is the status of the underlying assets? If it's a real estate related coin, what is the status of the real estate? Are there any tax liens? Is there any new debt, change of ownership? And as the status of the real world asset changes, you should have a near real-time update to the on-chain token so that anyone who wants to buy the token or currently has the token or anyone evaluating the token, whether they're a regulator or a purchaser, should have all the real-time information about that underlying asset when they look at the on-chain token. This is really going to have two very big impacts. Big impact number one is it's going to make better on-chain assets, which is going to make them more attractive and create bigger markets for them and benefit the actual entire industry. And the second thing that it's going to do is it's going to massively reduce the risk of owning those assets because you go from a 1-year window of verifying things about the asset, not to a 1-month window, but to a few seconds window. And this window shortening eliminates something called the gap problem. And the gap problem is when you basically have a period over which you can conduct fraud. If that period goes from a year to a month to a day to 10 seconds, your window for fraud just went away, basically. And that's one of the fundamental problem of making reliable assets. So the proof of bill and our work on proof of across different asset types will really allow for the most reliable assets to come out of the US financial system. And just like the US legislated into existence risk agencies, we think it should legislate into existence this proof of bill to make sure that the financial products generated in the US system are fundamentally better and fundamentally more reliable because they require this high level of proof of information. And this goes very well and in line with the current model of what makes the US financial system reliable, which is highly reliable assets with a certain level of regulation and information requirements. This is basically just continuing that, but doing that in an on-chain way that massively benefits the consumer, the market, and eliminates systemic financial risk. So this is what we hope the work we're doing now on the proof of bill will help us achieve.